Hello, I'm going to do another book review. This time we have something different. We have the New Testament, and this is called the NLT version, the New Living Testament. This is different from the King James Version in that it kind of uses modern language when it is talking about the scriptures, which makes it immensely easier to read, which that's previous. I'd only ever read the Bible in the King James version. So this NLT version, and this is just a little version that my church gives out for free. It was the quickest I've ever read the New Testament. It probably took me roughly maybe a month or 2 months of reading an hour or so a night to make it through the New Testament. I could read a lot more at once because, again, it was easier to read, easier to understand. It flowed a lot better to where when you read the King James, you had to stop every few passages and think like, hey, what were they trying to say here with modern day language? And with this NLT version, you don't have to do that. It flows pretty easily. I had a few other points. I like the NLT version. I always like reading the Bible. I would give it this NLT version. I would give it a 5 out of 5. It was easy to understand. It was a good, quick read for people that want to get into the scriptures. I wrote down some points. Usually I don't do this, but I wrote down some points to hit on. People are upset sometimes about the different translations in the Bible, the King James to the New Living Testament. And I just wanted to point out some facts. The NLT version still has the same messages. It might have a little different wordages, but the messages are the same. And when I read the Bible, I thought everybody did this, but I've been going to Bible study, so I guess not everybody does this. When I read the Bible, I was taught that there's 2 ways to read it. One is kind of the surface level, the literal meaning when you read it and what the words mean. And then I was taught that there's a deeper meaning to where God is talking to you through the Bible, and that's sort of God's way to reach out and give you a personal message when you read it. And I thought everybody studied the Bible that way, but I guess after going to Bible study at my new church I've been going to, people aren't taught that way. So I'm just going to hit some facts real fast about this to kind of explain, because to me, once I understood that, it made reading the Bible a lot more interesting. Instead of just reading a book that may or may not be kind of boring in some spots, it made it a lot more exciting because I'm like, hey, what is God trying to tell me after each passage or each story? So really, I was taught that that's how you're supposed to read the Bible, is to make it personal, to think about this deeper message. And when I used to go to Bible study, it was not anything about the literal meaning. It was, what is the deeper message that this passage is trying to pass on? So here's some points I wrote down just to back up some of these claims. One, you have to believe that Jesus was an omnipotent being. He was God on earth. He knew what was going to happen in the future. He makes reference to this several times. He knew he was going to get killed. He knew he was going to get crucified. And then another thing is Jesus used stories to teach. And there's a lot of examples of this, black and white examples in the Bible, where he says, hey, this story means this. And one example is when he's talking about throwing the seeds out in the different places, and it needs good soil. The seed of Christianity needs good soil to grow this plant, and he kind of explains that. Another one's about the farmers that were farming, and the owner of the farm leaves, and he comes, sends somebody to collect the taxes, and they kill the tax guy. That's another good example. And then where people get confused about, and where sometimes I'll have disagreements with people about, is almost all the miracles Jesus performed were miracles, but they were also to teach a lesson. And again, Jesus knew everything was going to happen to him. He knew that hundreds or thousands of years later, people were going to read these stories. And he just didn't do miracles randomly to prove that he was God on earth, or the Son of God, or the Lamb of God, whatever you want to call him. He used miracles to prove a point. And he knew that we were going to read them in the future. And that is also how he taught us, not just through his literal words, but also by his actions. He taught through those miracles, and why he performed them was to teach us something. And so part of it, again, you come down, I wrote down some examples, but it's almost every single miracle Jesus did. When Jesus clears the temple in Jerusalem of all the money changers and all the people selling things, that was kind of a message to us. Later on in the Bible, it refers to our bodies as a temple. And so did Jesus physically clear out these people out of the temple? Well, yes, he did. But he also wanted us to get the message that we need to clear out our own bodies, our own temples, and the only thing that should be in there is Jesus Christ, or the God, or the Spirit, and like healthy things. We need to get out all these unhealthy things. So that's kind of a message where he physically did that, but he did it to give us a message. And he even kind of like hints at that, and he says like, hey, you know, this temple is my body, and if you tear it down, I'll rebuild it in 3 days. So he makes that connection there, but where people fail to realize is he's also talking about our own personal bodies. That is him sort of leading by example almost. Feeding the 5,000, there's a couple different chapters where he feeds a big group of people. And did he really feed these people? You bet he did. But there's a lesson there where if you are sharing with other believers, there's always going to be enough, and even some left over. And you see that there's always enough food, and at the end they have more than what they started with. And that's actually a lesson on sharing. If you're generous in sharing, you yourself are going to have more than what you started with. And people just think, oh, he just did this to prove that he was the Son of God, or God on earth. No, he didn't. He did it to prove a point. Then you have another one where like his disciples were in a boat on the lake, and there's this big storm. And Jesus comes out and tells the storm to go away, and it immediately becomes a nice day to be out on the lake. Well, again, that's a symbolism for Jesus in our life. If we're living a stormy life and we turn to Jesus and follow Jesus, the storm clouds will clear, and we ourselves will have a nice sunny day. So did he really command a storm to clear up? Yeah, probably. But also that's a message for us. Again, it goes on and on. You got another one where Jesus cast out a bunch of, like, I want to say it's 500 demons or something. He lands and he casts out 500 demons out of this guy. Did he really cast out demons? You bet. But why so many demons? Well, it was to prove a point that no matter how many demons we have inside us personally, if you follow Jesus and believe in Jesus, you can be saved, you can get clean. And again, that's a personal message. Did he really do it? Yes, but there's a deeper meaning, and people miss that deeper meaning. They just want to read that Bible so literally. And to tie it all back in, that's why they get upset about these different versions of the Bible. The New Living Testament has the same main ideas as the King James. I've read them both. And I mean, maybe it's because I'm a language arts teacher, I see things. We teach a lot about main ideas and stories in 8th grade language arts. You know, what's the main idea of this story? And people go at the Bible with such a literal pen, they miss out on the main idea. What is the main idea Jesus is trying to teach us by doing these miracles? And I mean, I almost feel like bad for people that read the Bible at that level. They miss half the meaning of the Bible. They only focus on the literal meaning, and they miss out on some of the lessons. They get the lessons that are spelled out for them, but they don't get some of those hidden messages in there from Jesus's miracles. And again, you have to think, Jesus knew everything that was going to happen. So when he did a miracle, he did it to prove a point, not just to get recognition. Jesus didn't even like recognition. He didn't have to prove anything to anybody. So when he did those miracles, it was to reach out to us, the reader, and say like, hey, you know, how can this relate in your life? So again, if you've been reading the Bible that way, think about reading it again with that lens. What is Jesus trying to tell me personally? Check out the New Living Testament. It was definitely a good read. I'm going to actually go back through and try to read the Old Testament now. If you like these, I'll explain verses specifically about personal meanings in there. If this video does well, gets a lot of views. All right, see you guys next time.